Today on Callout, Lions Bay SAR and Canadian Forces search and rescue technicians are on a late-night mission.
We've got a hiker on a mountain, stranded.
And later, Penticton SAR does a whitewater heads rescue in the middle of winter.
I'm going to come in on the long line. We're going to pick them up and carry them to shore.
Phase your crew, we have a mission.
Wednesday, 8:15 p.m. Search and rescue members from 19 Wing Air Force Base in Comox, British Columbia go over last-minute plans for a late-night rescue. Their mission?
We've got a hiker on a mountain, stranded. That's all I needed to know at that point to start getting my gear prepped and put on the aircraft. Everything was there because we literally just finished a flight an hour before.
Tonight, the winds are high, the clouds are low, and time is short.
We had to act quickly just because of the window was closing very fast on us just for weather. And my biggest concern was the wind. It was high wind, about like 95 to 100 kilometers of wind at 5,000 feet in that vicinity.
That vicinity is Brunswick Mountain, just north of Vancouver and about a 40-minute flight from Comox Air Force Base. Hunkered down on that mountain is 27-year-old Adam Braverman, a lone hiker now late into the second day of what should have been a quick overnight trek to Brunswick Cabin. He didn't make it to the cabin, staying in a snow cave instead. Without snowshoes or skis, travel home is nearly impossible in the ever-increasing snow. Adam has set off his emergency distress beacon twice, canceling the first one almost immediately, and then sending another one less than 4 hours later. Lions Bay Search and Rescue were then contacted by the RCMP.
It was already 3:15, it's December the 22nd, that's just one day from the shortest day of the year. There's not a lot of light left. So I said, okay, we'll send a team in and try and find out where this fellow is and get him out.
Martin deploys a civilian rescue helicopter carrying a Lions Bay SAR mountaineering expert from nearby North Vancouver. Plan A is to quickly fly in, pick up the subject, and get him out. Plan B?
If you can't land for whatever reason, throw your pack and the radio out the door to him so he's got something, and then we'll try and deal with the rest of it later on.
The team flies north from Deeks Lake up the valley towards Brunswick Mountain, choosing this low-level approach to stay under the ever-increasing clouds. With only a few minutes to go before reaching Adam, there's a problem.
The weather was just too bad. The cloud seeding was too low, it was snowing heavily, it was gusting winds, and we had to call it off. So now we're stuck with having to mobilize the entire ground rescue.
10 SAR members drive on logging roads to get as close as possible to their destination. They unload and prepare to hike in. One 3-member team will work ahead to locate Adam, traveling light and fast, but cautiously, always watching for signs of avalanche danger. The remaining 6 members will bring extra gear in case they all get weathered in. A major storm front with high winds and heavy snow is slated to arrive at dawn.
Everybody's got batteries?
That storm was going to last 2 to 3 days, and we wouldn't have been able to get to Adam because of the high avalanche hazard. So this was essentially a bit of a race against time.
Each team member has a beacon that allows Martin to track their movements up the mountain. They also call in every 20 minutes to report snow and weather conditions.
Basically spent a number of hours just zigzagging up through a lot of fresh snow, trying to head up to Hat Pass. And at this point, we knew that Adam was on the far side of Hat Pass.
Yeah, no, I'm okay.
Martin was able to contact Adam by cell phone and advises him to stay put no matter what.
He had a stove, he had water, he had a pack, good clothing, and a sleeping mat.
Unfortunately, Adam had gotten wet the previous night and today had only been able to build an emergency shelter, a slit trench, so he was much more exposed to the elements and the oncoming storm.
He said he was lying in this slit trench with his gaiters over his face, and the spindrift was blowing underneath and covering him.
Martin briefly considered sending another team in from the north, but it is too far and too dangerous in the high-risk avalanche conditions. They're stuck with one way in and one way out.
Lions Bay base, this is Lions Bay 99.
Then, things change.
Lions Bay 8-3, this is base, over. One of the team members reported that he thought he could see an opening in the cloud above. And then later on he said, I can see some stars. So then I decided, okay, let's see if we can get 442 Squadron to come in as a backup option.
With the SAR-techs en route to Brunswick Mountain, the ground teams continue working their way up the ridge. By 10 p.m., the first team reports hearing a voice. Then, they spot Adam's headlamp. He's 400 meters away, on the other side of Hat Pass Gully. Prime avalanche terrain between him and the rescue team.
We just had storm after storm. We had a lot of fresh snow. And when you look at the avalanche website during the rescue, there were just a series of red bars.
Just as Lions Bay SAR starts checking the area for avalanche hazards, the SAR-techs arrive in their Cormorant helicopter.
And on our night vision goggles, as soon as we get on scene, we could see like 6 little flashlights on top of the ridge. So we talked to them, and we were trying to locate the subject. And they said it was about 200 meters just uphill. We could see a single light, but it was actually in cloud. So this is at that point that I told myself, oh boy, this is going to be a good one.
A good one, indeed. It's dark, cloudy, snowing, and the winds have now picked up to more than 85 kilometers per hour, creating severe turbulence over the mountainous terrain.
The issue with that night is we were on the lee side of the hill, the back side, and that 85 kilometers of wind was hitting the front side of the hill and was creating two big zones, one big zone of turbulence on top and one big downflow. So usually on a mission like that, we go straight to the guy and we kind of go in between those two layers. But that night we had no option of going between the two layers, so we had to accept at one point that we're going to get bounced around pretty good, and we did.
It takes the entire flight crew to slowly and carefully move the Cormorant up the ridge.
As we're going up the hill, we got one guy in the tail to make sure the tail doesn't hit anything. One guy on the left-hand side that is calling the movement of the aircraft all the way up. And myself, I'm back inside the cockpit looking at all the instruments. Because at that point, we're asking the machine to go all out, to give whatever it's got. And the pilot on the left, he's flying. He's got his head outside, and he's pulling as much as he can so that we can go ahead. And on my side, I'm looking at the torque, which is the power the helicopter can develop, and it's right at the maximum. And probably 1 or 2% more, we would have over-torqued the helicopter.
They have to fight the downdraft all the way up.
The downflow on us was extremely strong, so the guys in the back were getting bounced around, and we go up from tree to tree to tree. We stop there, maximum power, while the wind is pushing on us. And at one point, the wind comes down a bit, so we go up, up, up. And at one point, we were able to actually see the subject. So as soon as we had him visual, it made us feel good because we actually were able, for the first time, to actually see him on the ground.
I looked right up at the helicopter with my headlamp on, and the headlamp went right into the cockpit. I signaled to them, and I sort of waved my hand at them.
So I told the guys, okay, let's give it a try. And I told them it doesn't have to be pretty as long as it's fast, and we call it a grab and go.
He said it's going to be a single down and a double up, which means that I'm going to go down alone, I'm going to come up with somebody else. And he clarified to the crew that Nick will not disconnect from the hook. And he looked at me and he was very authoritative about it. Nick, you do not disconnect from the hook. And there was no way I was planning on it because the avalanche risk seemed a little too high, and I did not want to stay on this cliff for any length of time.
We put all our searchlight on the subject, and we got ready for the hoist, and the guys in the back were already all good to go.
The light was just blinding. It was pounding down right over top of me. They had hovered even lower down to about 20 meters so that the rotors were just low enough that they kicked up all this storm snow.
So as soon as we were in the hover, Carl brought the hook in. I hooked myself up. He gave me a safety check, and then I departed the aircraft on the hoist.
Because of the turbulence, it caused quite a swing on the cable. And in order to alleviate the swing, I lowered the SAR-Tech actually into the tree so he could grab a hold of the tree and stop swinging.
I grabbed onto the tree, but because the hoist was so unstable, it actually ripped me off that tree, and I bounced the rest of the way down between these 3 trees that our subject had dug a trench between. When I hit the ground, I landed directly in the trench, pretty hard, but I was literally an arm's reach from the subject.
And then suddenly, the SAR-Tech's on the ground, and this arm taps me on the shoulder and sort of whips me around.
He turned around, looked at me, and he had a look of surprise in his eyes. It kind of said, "Where did you come from?" And I looked at him square in the eye, I said, "Let's get the out of here."
I conned the aircraft back over top of the SAR-Tech. He was ready, he gave me a thumbs up, and I proceeded to hoist him in. And I picked him up quite quickly.
Initially, we swung out away from the trees, which was pretty good. But on the swing back, we smoked into this big old tree. And I don't think the subject even noticed. I took the brunt of the force. I looked at him, I said, "Are you okay?" He said, "Yeah." "All right, keep your head down." I grabbed his hood, and I pulled the top of his hood down to his chin so it'd cover up his face, and we made it back into the helicopter.
Once on board, the SAR-Techs immediately check Adam over.
You know, he had a little bit of a chill, but if you touched his torso, touched his forehead, he was warm.
He was checking to see, was I cold? Was I hypothermic? He asked me, you know, how are my hands and fingers? He asked, when have you had any water? When was the last time you ate? They grabbed a boxed lunch.
He initially refused. He said, no, I've got some survival rations, and I've eaten survival rations for some time, and it's not pleasant, so I gave him a boxed lunch, so get some real food in you.
Adam is flown to a landing pad near Lions Bay, checked out by the ambulance attendants, and then taken to Lions Bay SAR base for a debrief. For the ground SAR teams and 442 Squadron, it was a successful mission.
I was just very pleased that he was in as good condition, because I think otherwise we probably would have been waiting 3 or 4 days to have rescued him, and it could have been an entirely different story. So it was a very happy ending.
Now, Penticton SAR deals with a whitewater rescue in the middle of winter.
We were into a very fast-paced rescue mode at that point.
Saturday, 12:21 p.m. Penticton Search and Rescue was gearing up for a swiftwater mission. It's January, the middle of winter, minus 20 degrees Celsius with a wind chill. Freezing cold and getting colder by the minute. It's not the kind of weather one chooses to go for a swim in. But then again, it's not the best weather to put your car into the middle of a river.
We've just been called out to help a person off a vehicle that's gone into the Similkameen River about 8 km south of Princeton. We've got a team of swiftwater techs on board, and we're going to fly into the scene, assess it, and get our subject off his car.
Robert Dorr was en route from Penticton to Princeton to visit his children when he spun out of control on black ice and crashed into the Similkameen River. After drifting backwards down the river for almost 400 meters, the vehicle finally hung up on some rocks. As the car began to fill with water, he was able to crawl out one of the windows. Robert is now trapped on its roof, surrounded by icy, fast-flowing water, unreachable by emergency or ground SAR teams.
Princeton Road Rescue was already on scene. Attempts to throw a throw bag to him were unsuccessful, and they knew that they were into a situation where they needed our services.
At the airfield, the swiftwater team must decide what gear goes by helicopter and what will be taken by ground. It's all about keeping the weight down and the rescue options open.
You never know what it could be. It could go from a search to a rescue to a recovery. If the situation does change, we have the resources, the manpower needed to effect that. When we arrived, we could see the subject sitting on the roof of his car. The water was up to the bottom of the windshield. We could see he was secure, but if the car came loose or the subject came off, we had a really big problem. Just downriver, we had a full sheet of ice crossing the river with water flowing underneath. If the subject were to go under there, we would be losing him. We were into a very fast-paced rescue mode at that point.
The first order of business is to send a rescue swimmer on a line out to the subject with a PFD.
Our rescue swimmer also brought out a foil blanket and hot packs to help keep our subject stabilized and warm.
The swimmer will hold on to Robert Dorr while the team formulates the safest, most efficient rescue plan. One option is to put Robert into the water and pendulum him to shore.
When you put somebody in moving water, it strips the heat from their body 250 times faster than normal air. One of the issues with that is our subject was hypothermic. He hadn't been in the water, so he was already dry.
And once they reached shore, there was a 2.5-meter ice wall to contend with, followed by a very slippery embankment up to the road.
Another option would have been to use an inflatable rescue raft to float our subject to shore. Unfortunately, we don't have a rescue raft.
But what the team does have is a helicopter, long-line HETS equipment, and trained members. They quickly prepare for the mission.
I've rigged up to do a HETS rescue where I'm going to come in on the long line. We're going to pick them up and carry them to shore.
Every HETS rescue has its own set of challenges, and particularly so in this case. A combined HETS and Swiftwater mission occurring in the middle of winter.
In this rescue, you're working against two different things. In the winter, for one, there's no differential in light, so everything has no depth to it. Number two, working on a river, you don't have a fixed point. The water's moving away from you. So the pilot's trying to reference himself all the time.
Communication between pilot and rescuer is also a big challenge in a combined HETS Swiftwater mission.
In a normal HETS situation, we're able to use radios and hand signals to allow us to interact with the pilot to tell us how high we are off the ground and where we want to go. Unfortunately, in the Swiftwater environment, radios don't work in water, and our hand signals become null and void because we're trying to locate ourselves in a dynamic environment. So we had to use another person to call out my heights as I was being lowered to the river. The pilot's essentially just using me as a fishing lure and watching where I travel in the water.
It's all about finding a stable place to land.
We're looking for something that we can land on or in that allows us to stand up and detach ourselves from the rigging. It was either a car, we're looking for a large rock, a sandbar, or an eddy, which is a still pool of water that we can stand up and effectively get ourselves stabilized and release ourselves from the line.
Hamish opts to land alongside the car, but most certainly not behind it. If the car shifts and moves downriver while Hamish is behind it, he could become entrapped or crushed.
On our first attempt, the pilot put me down too far away from the car. That put me in the moving water and I was unable to orient myself to stand up and find a safe place to release. The pilot then picked me up. We flew back upriver 20 feet and he made a second attempt.
This time, Hamish gets a grip on the car.
I got myself situated at the car, unhooked from the line, and immediately passed up a helmet and the rescue sling to put on our subject.
The helicopter moves away, so there's no rotor wash blowing down on the team. When they're ready, the helicopter pilot must bring the line back to them within easy reach. That's no small task.
Most of the time on land, you're able to move to your line within, a couple of feet. You're able to wander around. Unfortunately, when you're sitting on top of a car and you only have about 6 inches of space, you don't want to reach too far. I'm attached to the subject, so should I fall off the car, our rescue swimmer now has to come and attend to us.
But I was a little scared because everybody was on the car and it started shaking, but they told me not to worry. The technician had a good grip on me and he said, if something happens, if the car rolls, we'll go downstream together.
Every movement we make on top of that car is precise. We wait for that line to come to us.
And indeed, helicopter pilot Eric Stoof places the line directly into Hamish's hand.
Just as soon as I made the hand signal to pick us up, we were off the roof. Gained our altitude, which was probably about 30 meters above the ground, and flew 100 meters over to the highway where we were set down.
1 minute I was sitting on the car And then the next minute I'm on the highway. I said, what an eerie feeling. Just floating down. And that point, I felt like I was safe.
With the rescued subject safely in the hands of BC ambulance paramedics, the 30 or so volunteer SAR members from Osoyoos, Princeton, and Penticton begin to gather equipment and personnel for the return to their bases.
When it comes to search and rescue, we're always looking for ways to do things better. This time, it was we needed a different resource. We needed that rescue raft. It would have taken the helicopter out of the equation, and it would have been a quicker, easier rescue.
Helicopter or raft, it was a very successful rescue, and Robert Dorr got both the ride of his life and a ride that no doubt saved his life.
I had forgot to ask the subject if he was afraid of heights when we took off. I said, this is a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity to do a flight like this. Not everybody gets to do this, but it's a bad way of getting here to do it.
Callout Search and Rescue features real stories filmed live by search and rescue teams during actual missions. Find out more at calloutsar.tv.